Hey, is your company's revenue growth stalling due to misalignment between sales and marketing? Or are you frustrated by missed opportunities and inefficient processes, maybe? In this episode of Strategy Talks, discover a framework to create a supercharged revenue machine that aligns your teams, optimizes your strategies, and drives unprecedented growth in today's competitive business landscape. This is Strategy Talks. If you're ready, so am I. Stay tuned.
Let's strategize together. Let's hear it from an expert. Join the conversation, it's informative and free. You and me, let's talk some strategy. Now here's your host, Morin-van.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Strategy Talks. I'm always so happy to be here with you on Tuesday mornings. Thank you so much to those of you who are tuning in live right now on Facebook, on LinkedIn, or on YouTube. And I want to welcome those of you who listen to Strategy Talks as a podcast. We are in season 4. We are talking to strategic thinkers this year, and I'm very excited to bring onto the stage with me right now my friend Lee. How are you today, Lee?
Hey, Doreen. Thanks for having me. Doing great.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk about revenue. We're going to talk about cash. So
Yes.
let's get started. We've got 30 minutes. We're 2 minutes in because of the jingle. Cash, you've got a brand new book out. Cash, can you tell us a little bit more what it's about and also why you wrote it?
Those two things go together. So I wrote it because I was initially a marketer, but I was a marketer who, in one of my biggest corporate jobs, I was given the role of sitting between marketing and sales. And my first task was to take over the Salesforce CRM. And so here I was, a marketer, and I was told, hey, Lee, I need you to get this sales team to begin using Salesforce more strategically and make sure they actually put the information in so that marketing knows what they're doing, so that the management knows what they're doing. And so, strangely enough, here's this marketer who has been placed directly between sales and marketing.
So, Lee, when we talk about businesses that may or may not have a revenue team, how can sales and marketing and revenue, how can we bridge that gap? Because that's really what your book's about. How can we start that communication and why is it so necessary?
You'll find today in most organizations, they have the idea of a revenue team. They may even have a chief revenue officer, but they haven't made the maturity leap to make sure that each team recognizes that. And we still work in silos. Sales works towards sales goals, marketing works towards marketing goals. And there isn't this sense of we have two different skill sets of the same team, the same revenue team. And that means that the problem is that the KPIs are split into two different teams, the goals are split, they don't communicate as to what they need. And so those four gaps between communication, alignment, systems, and honesty are the places where we look to try to fix those separated silos and bring them together. So my goal in writing the book was to point out the places that if you're in marketing, here are the things that you need to do to bridge the gap with sales. And if you're in sales, here's what you can do to bridge the gap with marketing and increase the value of your role in the business by understanding the other roles of the other teams. And then as a leader of these two organizations or these two segments of sales and marketing, if you understand thoroughly how these two skill sets work, then you can bring them together just like a sports team, offense and defense. The defense doesn't win a game by itself. The offense doesn't win a game by itself. And that's how we operate sometimes in our organizations, as if one can be successful without the other. It doesn't work that way. So the leaders can now, hopefully through this book, understand how to speak the language of both of these teams and bring them together to form one revenue team.
That's great because that was going to be my question, right? I'm a freelance marketer. I join existing teams of marketers when they need help with content or strategy. And people go, that's not my responsibility, or I don't know about that. I've actually been in a situation where we were not told the business goals. So we were just told, here, this is your social media goal. We didn't even know what their sales goals were. And so we were going blind. We were driving blind. You saying marketing needs to get with sales, needs to get with marketing, and leaders need to make sure everybody is aligned, I think is a really good message for anybody out there. Don't think, hey, it's not my problem. Your job is going to be easier if you know what other people are doing, and your
Yes,
results are going to be better if you know what goal you should attain. So
absolutely.
ultimately, we want leaders to step up and connect marketing and sales. But if that's not happening, say you're a marketer and you're listening to Lee talk about the book Cash, and you buy the book Cash and you read it and you're like, darn, this is what's wrong in my organization. How does somebody on the marketing team start out? I'm looking for practical. I know it's probably in the
Yeah.
book. What's a practical way to start that conversation and say, hello, I think we need to communicate?
I'm glad you asked that question because the book is very practical. I give lots of specific steps to say, if you're a salesperson, do this. If you're a marketing person, do this. And the first section is communication, of the acronym CASH, cash. Communication is the first one. The first thing I ask people to do is get in the meetings. If you're a marketer, get into the sales meetings. If you're a salesperson, attend the marketing meetings. And you're going to find that you're likely going to have gaps in your communication loop. For example, if sales says, hey, marketing, these leads you're bringing us aren't qualified enough. Whatever you're saying to these people is not what they need to hear. What marketing says to the world needs to come from sales. So if a marketer is in a sales meeting and they overhear the objections that sales is getting from their customers, those objections become the next piece of content that marketer creates. So the best way to create content as a marketer is to hear what sales hears on the front line. That's where the best content comes from. And in addition to the objections they hear, what if sales hears customers refer to their problem or their pain or even your own product in certain language? I often say your marketing may call it the new widget 3000, but the customer calls it a screwdriver. And so while we're busy in our marketing world saying, hey, let's market the new widget 3000, meanwhile, the customer says, I need a new screwdriver. Marketing needs the language that the customer uses. And if we're not talking to the customer like sales is day in, day out, we may not have the right language or the right wording. And sometimes that wording isn't pretty marketing words. It may just be the way our customer talks. If you want to resonate with the customer, you have to know how the customer talks. So these things happen through communication from sales to marketing to sales. There are two sections in the book, one dedicated to marketing to sales communications and one dedicated to sales to marketing communications. And it lays out exactly whatever your role is, these are the steps you need to take to make sure you're communicating to the other team to make your job work better.
I love that. I love that because I cannot tell you. And you probably wrote this book because marketers like me are frustrated with this, right? But
Mhm.
we need to understand how to speak to sales and why it's necessary. So I love that you wrote this book. And honestly, I can't wait to read it. So my next question was actually going to be about that content marketing. How does it fit into this revenue strategy? But you just answered that question. So how about metrics, right? What metrics should companies focus on to measure success of sales and marketing alignment? So once sales and marketing start aligning, what can somebody expect to see?
You're such a great interviewer, Doreen. Yes, so that is the alignment part. And a lot of that section of the book is about KPIs because we often have KPIs that are geared towards our team and not the organization. Marketers, we need to have our things like our views and likes and web visits and MQLs. That's part of our world, but those are not terms you want to send up the ladder. You don't want to send a report to those things. It won't get past your CMO. And if your CMO is smart, they'll find out, they'll make marketing, give me some deeper analytics beyond marketing speak, right? So you want to get into, in fact, here's one tactic. If you're in marketing, look at the sales reports. Look at the sales reports and figure out how can you inject marketing influence into that sales report. So two things will happen. One, you'll be able to say, wait a minute, the thing we did over here affects that number in the sales report. Let's see if we can add that column or graph into the sales report. The other thing that will happen is you'll understand what's important to them, and you'll be able to come up with marketing metrics that you can communicate to them and say, okay, you're interested in sales qualified leads. Let's look at our conversion rate. What is our conversion rate and how can marketing affect that? You also learn some things like all these bluebirds that sales is getting that weren't bluebirds. They weren't things that fell out of the sky. They weren't deals that sales just found. Marketing can go, oh, by the way, this person you just found out of the sky, marketing's been nurturing them for 2 years. They've been to webinars. They've read white papers, been on the website. But unless we are in these meetings to communicate these things, these realizations don't happen. So when a salesperson sees that marketing is nurturing and communicating with their prospects, sales wants to lean in and say, wait a minute, what else do you know about my prospect? Let's be friends here now. Let's figure out, what do you know about my prospects that I don't know? So sales needs to understand that marketing has a vast bit of information about prospects before sales may even recognize who they are. So there's really no reason for us not to be the best of friends, because we have this information between the two teams, and marketing can't market if we don't know who we're marketing to, what the customer's saying. Sales can't sell well if they walk into a call with someone as if it's the first time they've spoken to them. Meanwhile, that person just left the webinar. They know all about your product. They finally touched sales because they want to close a deal. All these things, we trip over each other if we don't have this alignment with sales and marketing between the two.
All right. So I have a follow-up question on the content marketing piece, and that has to do with organic versus paid. You were talking about adding a column, and like in the sales report, like we were running this campaign. Do you have any examples, or you have any ideas on the difference if it was organic? Is that something that you can actually show? Is that something you have to do with like UTMs, or hey, we put $5,000 behind this? You had a Black Friday sale, or you had a 4th of July or an Amazon Prime sale, and we put all this money behind it. And so we helped you sell this, either a product, or, hey, this is the prime time for service, and we put some money behind it and we have the results. Is there a difference between organic and paid when you talk to the sales team as well?
Absolutely. In fact, one of the things you have to communicate to sales is that marketing is not coin operated. We would like to say we put a dime in here and a dollar comes out that side. And sometimes we lean into advertising because we can track it better, and not realizing that perhaps some of our organic work can be more productive. The problem is, and we talk about this in the book, is the time frames. Organic marketing has a much longer time frame. It's a long game, and it's much, much harder to track, and it's getting more hard to track each day. There's more dark social, there's more communities that are discussing products versus being discussed out on the internet and social platforms. Things are getting much, much harder to track. And I urge marketers not to lean into what's trackable, because what happens is you begin almost admitting, oh yes, it's coin operated, but it's not. So you paint yourself into a corner to teach your sales team that marketing is coin operated, and it's not. So both are important. Your organic's important, your paid's important, but you have to explain to your sales leadership that they operate differently. And the most important part is they operate on different time frames. So while you're paid, you can fit it neatly into the sales time frames of, let's measure per quarter. We spent this much money first Q1. How many leads we get Q1 because we put X number of dollars in? That's very easy to measure because you know what you spent, where you spent it. You can track the clicks back to the website. All that stuff's traditional, but it's only a portion of what marketing does, and it's only a portion of your success. So I urge marketers not to lean too heavy on that, because you're going to shoot yourself in the foot by saying that's what marketing is. It's only a portion of it. And at the same time, there's a time frame. Sales has very defined measurement time frames: quarters, halves, years. But organic marketing could take twice as much time to show up as a result.
For sure.
And we have to do more asking of our customers. This is something you have to ask sales to do too. How did you find us?
Mhm.
Because the digital footprints are fading away. It's like footprints in the sand by the ocean. They're fading away really quickly. And so we have to ask customers, how did you find us? Just last week, I had a client who told us, we're having a conversation on the sales call. And I said, how did you find us, by the way? Oh, I Googled you. And then she says, yeah, when I Googled you through ChatGPT, I Googled, I said, whoa, pause.
I love that.
Yeah, she was using Google as a verb, lowercase g, as a verb of searching. And so, had we not had a longer conversation, we would have stopped at they Googled us. Now, we've also had people say they Googled us and they found us through the first result, which means it was a paid, because that particular term we didn't show up as the first result. So, even when asking customers, we just covered paid, top result. Organic, Google could have been a second result. And third, the Google wasn't even a Google at all. It was ChatGPT. We have to involve sales in asking these questions as well. But to answer your question about organic versus paid, we have to measure them differently. We
Yeah.
have to recognize that it's always changing. And most importantly, marketers do not give a perception to sales and their leaders that it's coin operated, because it's not.
All right, great. And one more little caveat on the side about content marketing. How about involving your salespeople in the marketing? How about getting them on video or getting them on skits or getting them to help
Absolutely.
you write something? Is that a good idea?
Absolutely. And so I have to mention, I have a content marketing agency. And the first thing the agency did when it launched in 2017 was I was a marketing director and I needed video content. And I sat down our sales team and interviewed them, and very unstructured, because I wanted to hear what they would say to their customers. I wanted to hear what they heard from the customers. I want to hear those objections, that they said that they heard from the customers. And we captured the most wonderful conversations from the sales team. And it ended up being really effective content marketing, because now that salesperson could sell 24 hours a day. Anybody who hit our website and had that objection or had that question, the salesperson was there to explain it to them in a way that marketing couldn't necessarily do, because sales was already trained and sharpened to speak to the customer in a way that marketing couldn't do. And so, yes, video was the foundation of my company, Content Monster. It was a foundation of talking to salespeople. Because remember, even then I was not stuck. I had the pleasure of working directly between sales and marketing. And so as a marketer, my first go-to for content was the sales team. And so we gathered talking head videos with that sales team, and it proved to be the best content that marketing could have created.
All right. So if you're listening and you're watching, get your sales team on camera. Whether you do it on a fun weekend getaway or an evening with some pizza or in a morning briefing, get them to answer those questions for you and get them those talking heads talking about how they communicate with the customers, what customers are saying. And infuse some humor too, I think.
Yeah.
How about technology? What role does technology play in communicating and in getting sales and marketing aligned in order to boost that revenue growth? What kind of technology are we talking? You just mentioned AI. Is that it?
Yeah.
Is there other, what's up?
Hey, where is AI not at right now? So in the systems part of the book, I start off talking about how I was the manager of the marketing automation platform and the sales operations platform. For example, it might have been Pardot in Salesforce or Marketo in Microsoft Dynamics. So being able to see those parts of data, one of the first things I found was those two systems weren't always tied together correctly. So you had two customer journeys, both from the standpoint of how marketers behaved and sales behaved to their customers, but also even when the data entered the company, it also was in technically separate silos of software, to where the journey, I had one company that I came in to consult. They had a journey through the marketing automation platform. Then they would export it, pull it into the sales operations platform, Salesforce, as brand new with no history. Like that person could have been asking questions and going to webinars for years, but then the salesperson sees it as a brand new object in Salesforce with no history. That blew my mind that exists. That was one of those days where I wrote some notes. I'm going to write a book one day about this. This is craziness.
That is craziness. That is craziness. So use technology to your advantage, right? Have systems talk to each other or tools talk to each other. That's one way.
Right. And the beauty of where we're going now with AI is it'll help us integrate those even faster. Because before, first of all, the goal would have been to at least get those two tied together so that a lead progressed from one system to the next with all its history and back, even when they close a deal, that goes back to the marketing operation platform as well. That flow had to happen. So that's step one. But now we've evolved to where if we place AI on top of that in the right place, it can find the gaps that we didn't realize. I know in the past, I've probably spent hours or weeks deduplicating things between different systems or trying to find out if this is the same person. Now with AI, we can say, look, here's all our data. What are you seeing here? Are you seeing duplicates? Are you seeing that the customer journey has people are more likely to end up in opportunities if they came in through this particular marketing channel? Now we have the intelligence to say, here's our data. What does AI see that we don't? So the systems part is always getting stronger right now because AI is like the new steroid injection into our systems that we should be utilizing.
That's perfect. And that leads me to one of the last questions I have for you. How does customer experience play into this? I love that you just said about having AI help you with the data and figuring out how they come in. Can it also help you figure out the customer experience, their sentiment about your product or service? Can it help you in that regard too? And if there's anything else that I'm missing, can you fill us in on that?
There's so many ways that we're going to be able to utilize AI for that. So first, as I mentioned, is bringing those two systems together. Whatever software marketing is using and sales is using, it brings those two together and it can see things across the bridge that we may not have noticed. Also, we can task AI with understanding the customer journey. So while we're off here in marketing land and in sales land, we can say, look, take all this data, look at John Smith, the customer. What is their journey like? What was the time frame between the webinar and the sales call, the webinar and the web page? Is there a pattern between webinar first, then web page, or web page and then webinar, social, then the web page? Find these patterns and see if you can find out if there's a pattern that's dominant that leads to a deal on the back end. And then once we get them through this virtual funnel, even though it's very messy nowadays to call it a funnel, but once they get to they've already purchased and they're in the loyalty stage or the delight stage, now we can use AI to say, what have we learned about this person? We see their whole journey. We can go out and find out more about this person. Maybe we can find some psychographics to go along with the demographics we've already collected about this person. And then we can say, okay, what will it take to delight this person? And it may be going back as far as their first time they came to your website. Suppose they visited the website for the first time and the webinar was how to fix XYZ problem. Now, you know what? They came to us with this particular problem. Now, despite what they bought from us, despite what else they did along the journey, AI can say, they came to us with this problem. Let's make sure they're still delighted now with that, right?
Sure.
We've solved that problem. And then maybe not only delight them by keeping that problem solved, find out what else we can solve and go back to them and sell them more based on what we understand about them now. So yes, the customer journey is only getting better if once we understand that there's only one customer journey and we also have technology to enhance that journey.
All right. So we're going to wrap up, but I want to see if you see any emerging trends in revenue strategy. And you just wrote this book and people are finally getting down to let's connect marketing, sales. You're going to advocate for that. Is there anything else that we need to look for that's coming up in this area? I know just even 5 years ago, I never even heard of a chief revenue officer, and now they are out there. Definitely, that's a trend. That's something people are starting to talk about money and connecting that. And 2024, every conference I went to, I heard people talk about silos. Let's get out of the silos. I don't know if anybody knew how to get out of them, but you wrote the book, so that's
Yes.
good. But I kept hearing about the silos. What do you see coming up? And then also, once you've answered that question, let us know where we can learn more about your book.
What I hope to see coming up is marketers making a path higher up in the C-suite. And that means that because right now the CMO is about as high as you're going to get. The CMO doesn't go far beyond that. You don't see many CEOs who were coming through the marketing pathway. So if marketers become more in tune to sales, they have a route to a CRO, and the CRO has then the path up the executive ladder. And for the sales members as well, they'll be much better salespeople when it comes to understanding marketing, which leads to the customer journey. So that's what I see trending. I see people who understand both sides of the coin better so they can do better at their jobs. They can avoid getting eliminated by AI. And marketers can have a longer tenure because they're not just talking about follows and likes, they're talking about revenue. And so the trend I hope to see is more revenue teams with different skill sets that span sales and marketing.
That's awesome. All right. So I'm going to put a banner up on the screen for those of you who are watching. If you're listening to this episode of Strategy Talks, the banner says aleejudge.com. That is where you can find the book Cash. Anything else that people need to know about the book, and where are you most actively? Where should they connect with you on social?
Thanks for putting up the web address. Yes, it's aleejudge.com. I also should mention, I know you didn't put it up, but there's also an assessment test that I give when I go out and speak that allows people to look and see how well is their team doing in terms of working together as a revenue team. And it's easy to remember the URL. It's takethecashtest.com. So takethecashtest.com. And there you can go and take an assessment to see how well your sales and marketing teams really are working together, and if you need more work. So in terms of where I hang out, LinkedIn is my favorite place to hang out. It's my favorite social platform. So please connect with me there on LinkedIn. It's also A. Lee Judge. And I look forward to talking with you. And maybe if you read the book, I'd love to field your questions and talk about it more. So look forward to meeting you all.
That's amazing. And yes, I will make sure I have the link and put it in the show notes to that assessment. So if you're listening to this or watching this, it'll be in the show notes. We'll add that there so you can take this assessment and see how your team is doing too. Lee, I want to thank you for being my guest today. I want to thank all of you for staying to the end. If you're here at the end listening to Strategy Talks as a podcast, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being here today. I'll be back next week with another episode of Strategy Talks. Bye, everybody.